her final hours, she described every single symptom of her own death to the people who were supposed to be keeping her safe, and yet they did nothing. This is Lacey Robinette Hanges, and she was only 34 years old, a wife, a mother of 2 young boys, and a nurse in Natchez, I might be mispronouncing that, Mississippi. She worked as a hospice care consultant and had previously worked as a nurse at the Adams County Correctional Facility. She knew what a medical emergency looked like. So here is what happened. Lacey had been battling bipolar disorder that became symptomatic in August of 2023. In the days leading up to her death, her family recognized that she was in the middle of a serious mental health crisis. She had been off her psychiatric medications for 3 days. On August 26th, the decision was made to take her into custody so a mental health hold order could be obtained. On August 28th, after some back and forth between county clerks, the Adams County Chancery clerk accepted the mental hold affidavit. So Lacey was transported by a Winona police sergeant to the Adams County Jail in Mississippi. The jail was told ahead of time that she had been brought due to a mental health condition. She was not a criminal. She was not charged with a crime, nothing like that. She was just being held overnight so she could appear at a commitment hearing the following afternoon, where a judge would determine whether to send her to a psychiatric facility to get the care she needed. She was booked, photographed, given a jail-issued suit, and placed in a holding cell at around 3:05 p.m. She would never leave that cell alive. What followed comes directly from the federal lawsuit filed by her husband, Russell, and her mother-in-law, Sherry, on behalf of her 2 minor sons, Jack and Tyler. So I'm going to tell you the timeline. Somebody sent me the entire lawsuit, and so I have the chronological order of how everything happened, and here's what it says. Now, this timeline is documented on surveillance video from the holding cell, the control room, and the jail hallway. By 3:20 p.m., Lacey had already told jail staff that she needed her medication and was experiencing withdrawals. By 3:51 p.m., she told officers that she had been off her medication for 3 days. She repeated her request for medication again at 4:33 p.m. and again 30 minutes later at 5:03 p.m. She had also mentioned that she had been pepper sprayed 3 times the night before while in the custody of the Grenada County Sheriff's Office. Then the night shift came on. At 8:42 p.m., Lacey screamed for help and asked someone to call 911. She said that her chest was hurting. An officer named Robinson came to her door and told her that she put herself in this situation. At 9:42 p.m., Corporal Krasick sat outside her door and talked with her. Lacey told him that she was afraid of dying in that cell. He reassured her that she would not die that night. He told her that he would check on her later. At 10:13 p.m., things took a visible turn. Lacey began drinking water compulsively in large quantities and then vomiting it back up. She vomited multiple times within minutes, then kept drinking. She told officers Robinson and Williams that she was feeling dizzy, that her heart was racing, and that she needed to go to the hospital. She screamed that she needed someone to call 911. Officer Williams told her to put her clothes back on because she had taken her clothes off. Officer Robinson told her pepper spray would make her throw up. He told her, "We aren't going to take you anywhere tonight." And then he gave her more water to drink. In the control room, Corporal Krasick told Robinson that Lacey was just trying to make herself sick so that she could be taken to a hospital. Robinson said, "Ain't nothing wrong with her," and that's in quotes. At 10:52 p.m., Lacey told officers that she was feeling dizzy, that her heart was racing, that she felt terrible, she needed to go to the hospital. And then at 10:53 p.m., Lacey vomited blood into the holding cell sink. The sink was filled with blood. You could visibly see it. She screamed, "I'm throwing up blood! Officer, I'm throwing up blood!" She reached her hand through the door hole with bloody water in her palm, trying to show the officers what was happening to her, hoping that physical proof would make them act. She yelled, "Officer Mike, I need to go to the ER. I am throwing up blood." Officer Williams, who was in the control room and could hear Lacey clearly, got up from her desk, walked over to staple some papers, and then sat back down. She did not look at the monitor. She didn't even respond to Lacey. At 10:54 p.m., Lacey said, "I am dying in here." She vomited blood a second time at 10:59 p.m., filling the sink again, also vomiting onto the cell floor. She vomited blood a third time at 11 p.m., the heaviest amount yet. The blood was clearly visible on their surveillance cameras, and yet they still did nothing. Officer Collins, who had just signed into the control room and was watching the monitors, did nothing. Officer Williams, also in the control room, looked at the monitor and did nothing. The blood remained visible in the sink and on the hallway floor outside her door for over 50 minutes while officers continued to walk past it. At 11:28 p.m., Officer Robinson went to Lacey's door. She told him, "I am sick. I am dying in here. My heart is racing. My mouth is numb. I am throwing up blood." He told her, "I don't know what to do." She said, "I need your help. Call 911. He replied, "I can't." He returned to the control room and announced to the others, "She says she's dying," and then sat back down in his chair. At 11:35 p.m., Lacey noticed blood on her hand. She checked her own pulse, and then she recited the Lord's Prayer. Officer Robinson watched this on the monitor and told Officer Williams that there was something wrong with her, and yet neither of them did anything. At 11:40 p.m., Officer Robinson was eating food. By 12:57 a.m., he had gone to sleep in the control room. Officer Williams was still sitting in her chair. In the hours that followed, Lacey kept fighting. She pounded on the door. She prayed for her children. She told the walls around her that her heart rate was stopping, that she was losing consciousness, that she was losing feeling in her legs, that death was near. At 12:32 a.m., she screamed, "I barely have a pulse. I guess y'all don't care." At 12:34 a.m., she screamed, "I'm dying. I can't breathe." At 12:36, she screamed, "I'm getting dark." At 12:43, she screamed, "Someone call 911. I'm losing my bowels. I'm losing consciousness," and pounded on her own chest. At 1:33 a.m., Lacey laid down on the mat by the floor, and by 1:38 a.m., she appeared unconscious, taking very shallow breaths. Officer Robinson continued sleeping. At 2:09 a.m., Robinson woke up, looked at the monitor, and called Williams over. He said, "Why is she laying there in the water? I think her head hit the door." He noted that she had a serious problem. Officer Williams walked down the hall, looked through the porthole in the door, saw Lacey lying nude on the floor in her own feces, and walked back to the control room and sat down. She didn't call anyone. She did not do anything. At 2:15, Robinson, still watching the monitor, said, "She's wallowing in it. I never seen anyone wallowing in their shit." End quote. He went back to sleep. From 3:27 a.m. onward, Lacey appeared to be barely breathing. By 3:37 a.m., her breathing had become convulsive. She continued to breathe in that convulsive manner through 3:47 a.m. By 4:08 a.m., her breathing was very light. She grunted loudly from around 4:25 a.m. to about 4:38 a.m. At 6:49 a.m., a jail staff member attempted to open the holding cell door. Sometime after that, staff entered the cell and found Lacey dead. She had been scheduled to appear at a court hearing that very afternoon. A toxicology report came back negative for any illicit substances, just as her drug test days earlier had been. An independent autopsy conducted in March of 2024 found that Lacey died of hyponatremia, which is low sodium caused by drinking excessive amounts of water. It is a recognized treatable medical emergency. The same pattern showed up in her lab results. The complaint states her death could have been easily prevented with a timely medical care. A nearby hospital was available. A 2022 operational assessment of Adams County Jail commissioned by the sheriff had already warned that there was no medical staff on duty at the jail at any time, that staffing levels were dangerously insufficient, and the report's conclusion stated that it was the assessor's unequivocal position that operations in the current facility are untenable. According to the lawsuit, none of those deficiencies were corrected before Lacey died. In post-death interviews, Officer Collins said of Lacey, "She was like a mental patient." She said, "We get mental patients all the time, and you just don't know what you're going to get with these people." When asked why she was not concerned about Lacey lying on the floor, she said, quote, "I thought she had everything she needed outside of medicine." Officer Robinson said she thought Lacey's behavior was normal because he had seen other inmates do similar things. The lawsuit alleges violations of Lacey's 14th Amendment rights, negligence, and gross negligence. Her husband Russell, her mother-in-law Sherry, and her two young sons, Jack and Tyler, are the plaintiffs. Lacey was a nurse. She knew exactly what was happening to her body. She begged for help for hours. She prayed for her children. She recited the Lord's Prayer, and she died on the floor of a jail cell while the people who were supposed to watch her slept, ate, and stapled papers.